Um, there is the experience of the self, the awareness, and the stillness and the peace. And when I'm alone, then there's no problem, all is fine. And then comes the meeting with other people and talking with other people and people who are still in the personhood, most of them. And then I see that I easily slip back into the personhood myself for that moment. And then afterwards I feel like, what a pity. I feel like I've lost my truth for a little bit. I know it's not really true, of course, because it cannot happen, but it is this feeling. And I guess this is a trick of the mind also. But I like to know how to deal with it, because this comes and goes, and I guess everybody has this experience.
You're right in theory, of course, it doesn't come and go. But we're talking at a practical level, the feeling that it comes and goes. So, in just the same way that we were sitting in silence this morning, and no further thoughts were appearing in me, so I thought, okay, the meditation's come to an end. And then I heard the sound of the footsteps and the banging upstairs. So the meditation then took off again. And because I noticed that these sounds could seem to be a distraction from this silence of meditation. So I commented on that actually the sounds themselves were not a distraction unless we allowed them to be a distraction. In fact, they were made only of hearing, and hearing is shining with the knowing of it. So in just the same way that we are free either to consider the sounds a distraction, in which case we will feel as if we have been distracted, or we are free to see or experience the sounds shining with this knowing. In other words, pointing towards it, not pointing away from it. Now, that's relatively easy with a few dull sounds. It's more difficult when you're in relationship, when the content of the conversation may not be so neutral. But it's just a question of degree. So just slowly, when you're sitting at home, allow these neutral experiences, sounds, sights, unimportant thoughts, just allow them all to flow through you and see that each appearance shines with its reality. And that not only does each appearance not take you away from reality, it takes you towards reality, it shines with reality. And then, as you become comfortable, then when you're walking down the streets of Amsterdam, as we were saying earlier, you realize that all this activity and agitation and busyness and these 10,000 things that are always moving and changing, they're all just shining. Just as relatively speaking they are shining with the light of the sun. In reality, they are shining with the light of pure knowing, the consciousness that illuminates them or makes them knowable. So you're raising the bar a little bit. You're putting yourself in circumstances that would seem to be less peaceful, potentially more distracting, but realizing actually no, unless I consent, unless I allow them to distract me, nothing can distract me. And then you start doing the same thing when you're in slightly more testing circumstances with people who don't share your love of truth and whose conversation would seem to be pulling you in a different direction. So now the circumstances are no longer just neutral, they're actually trying to pull you away from this feeling understanding. But see that unless you consent to be distracted, even this conversation, these people that you are with that don't share your love of truth, even their conversation is shining only with this infinite knowing. So you raise the bar little by little. You can also do it with pain. I've given you a psychological example. You gave us a psychological example where you're talking about thoughts and emotions, but you can do it with the body as well. To begin with, you just feel that your neutral sensations, for instance now, the tingling of your hands or feet, they're just shining with, all that's there is the knowing of them. But then imagine a sensation that becomes increasingly painful. It's no longer just a neutral or even pleasant sensation. It begins to be unpleasant. At a certain stage, the unpleasantness seems to have the power to take us away, to distract us. And then if you notice that, you stay as the sensation becomes more painful. You see, even in this painful sensation, all that is shining in this experience is the knowing of it. Now, of course, there's a certain stage with pain where it becomes so intense that the body-mind kind of collapses onto it. That's natural, but that's not a very common experience. Somebody once asked Atmananda Krishna Menon, how do I know when I am established in my true nature? And he said, when thoughts, feelings, sensations and perceptions no longer have the power to take you away. And then somebody asked him, what's the best circumstance for realizing one's true nature? And he said, a career either in the army or the police force. He was a police officer. And he said, because if those circumstances cannot take you away from your true nature, you'll be safe everywhere.
Oh, it's practice, sort of.
Exactly. So don't feel these difficult relationships are there to thwart you. On the contrary, feel that your love of truth has materialized these very circumstances in order to help you be firmly established in your true nature. Thank your friends for being so difficult.
Thank you.